When soldiers gathered for a group portrait in 1903, they could not have imagined that experts 100 years later would scrutinize their faces so closely. What these investigators found in that old photograph astonished the world of history and reshaped our view of military imaging. The creaky, heavy wooden door of the Central History Museum swung open as Laura Morris hurried in, balancing a bulky cardboard box. Water droplets from her rain-soaked coat fell onto the shiny floor as she placed her treasured find down. "I have discovered it," she announced, her voice resonating in the silent gallery. The original record of the Zenon Guards had remained hidden in the basement archives all this time. The curator quickly approached with his brows raised in disbelief. For many months, preparations for an exhibition celebrating the Imperial Guard had been underway, yet the main attraction, a legendary picture of over 1,000 soldiers lined up in flawless order, had been absent. On the morning before the show opened, Laura had almost miraculously located it in an old storage facility. With shaking hands, they removed the vintage image from its protective cover. Even after more than a century, the picture was extremely clear. 1,250 guardsmen neatly arranged in 25 rows, every face sharp and distinct despite the enormous size of the group. "This cannot be real," murmured the curator, adjusting his spectacles. Cameras in those days were not capable of such precision. Laura moved closer to inspect the soldiers' faces. "Notice how clear everything is. Look, you can even make out..." She paused and squinted at the front of the image. "Are those little remnants of cigarettes in the grass?" The curator retrieved a small magnifier from his desk drawer and confirmed her suspicion. Among the blades of grass in the first row were several tiny cigarette ends, captured perfectly by a camera that, according to every account, should not have been able to produce such detail. "We must digitize this immediately," he declared as he reached for his mobile phone. "There is something truly amazing about this picture." They had no idea that this find would launch a research effort that later stunned both historians and photography specialists worldwide. The soldiers who had assembled for this portrait in 1903 had unknowingly left behind a puzzle that would only be solved 100 years later. 3 days thereafter, the museum's modest digitization lab was buzzing with activity. Jordan, a young technician responsible for scanning, had been at work non-stop capturing every detail of the enormous old negative. The original measured 110 centimeters by 60 centimeters, far larger than most photographs from the early 20th century. "This is absolutely incredible," Jordan said, while pointing to his computer screen where he had zoomed in on a portion of the image. "I can see every button on their uniforms, each insignia, and even the expressions on their faces. This level of clarity should not exist in technology that is over 100 years old." Laura nodded, equally taken aback. "Is there anything written about how this picture was made? Only what is on the back?" Jordan carefully flipped over the original. "It states that it was created in 1903, displaying the full might of the Zephyr Lifeguards Regiment. The size of the negative is noted, yet no details exist about the camera used or its photographer." Word of the extraordinary picture soon spread beyond the museum walls. Within mere weeks, scholars from Moscow, Berlin, and London had arrived, eager to examine it. Dr. Ivan Lebedev, a foremost authority on historic photography from Moscow University, spearheaded the research team. As he studied the photograph, a frown appeared on his face. "Do you see why this is odd?" he asked Laura. In 1903, imaging devices were not as sophisticated. Glass plate negatives were usually small and the lenses incapable of capturing such a vast scene with so much detail. It should have been unachievable, yet all the evidence was right before their eyes. As the team assembled high-powered digital tools to inspect every millimeter of the picture, Their doubts soon transformed into excitement. Not only could every face be seen clearly, but each detail that early 20th century technology should have lost was plainly visible. "Examine this particular soldier," commented Dr. Sarah Thompson, the imaging specialist from London, as she pointed to a man in the middle row whose cheeks seemed slightly swollen. "It almost looks as though he is holding his breath." The intrigue deepened when an elderly visitor recognized one of the figures. David Monroe, a 78-year-old local resident, had come to view the exhibit after reading about it in the papers. Upon seeing the famous image, he immediately requested to speak with the researchers. "My grandfather is in that picture," he revealed, his eyes sparkling with joy. His name was George Larkin, and he used to share amazing stories about the day this photo was taken. The team gathered around David, keen to hear personal memories that might explain the mystery behind the seemingly impossible image. The picture was taken when the regiment commander retired. They spent the entire day setting up for the photo shoot. "My grandfather even lit a cigarette while on the scaffold, and when the signal was given, he clutched the cigarette without enough time to blow out the smoke. That is why his cheeks look puffed in the photograph," George explained. Dr. Ivan Lebedev revisited the picture on his screen and zoomed in on George Larkin's face. The account matched precisely with what they observed: a young soldier with noticeably puffed cheeks, as if in mid-breath. "Did your grandfather ever talk about the type of camera used?" inquired Dr. Sarah Thompson. After a pause and some thought, he recalled, "They built a tall scaffold for the photographer. The camera itself was enormous. It was described as being as large as a small automobile, with a lens comparable to a dinner plate. This revelation thrilled the team. A camera featuring such a large lens in 1903 would have been a groundbreaking invention." "There is more," David added. "My grandfather mentioned that they spent countless hours positioning every soldier. The photographer was extremely meticulous, even more demanding than the officers. Some soldiers even joked that he was stricter than their superiors." While the investigation continued, another surprising discovery emerged. In the background beyond the rows of soldiers, the team noticed what looked like surveying gear. "This is peculiar," murmured Dr. Ivan Lebedev as he enhanced the digital image further. "What is a piece of surveying equipment doing in a military group photo?" This question sent them on a new research trail. Sifting through old archives, they found scattered mentions of a hidden optical research division within the Imperial Russian Army that had been working on advanced photographic devices for reconnaissance. "Perhaps the regiment photo was a cover-up," suggested Dr. Mark Ritter, the historian from Berlin. "Maybe its true purpose was to trial new aerial reconnaissance technology." This hypothesis gained weight when a short note from a military journal in 1904 mentioned experimental optical equipment being tested at the headquarters of the Zephyr Lifeguards. Although the journal entry was brief, it matched the timeline of the photo perfectly. At the same time, Laura became increasingly absorbed by the individual soldiers in the picture. Using the remarkable detail provided by the image, she began identifying each soldier and researching their life stories through military records. The Zephyr Lifeguards Regiment had a prestigious past. As noted in a caption found on a copy of the image in another museum, the Lifeguards KE Regiment of the Emperor was established in 1710 by Emperor Peter I. Since then, the regiment had participated in 20 wars, dedicating 50 of those conflicts, and had traveled to Sweden, Persia, Turkey, Germany, Denmark, England, Portugal, Greece, Austria, Switzerland, Romania, and Bulgaria. The caption continued by listing numerous accolades. For distinguished service, he has earned insignia, 2 silver trumpets for the capture of Germany in 1760, the Grenadier rank for excellence in 1812, special cap insignia for the victory at Mountains Airy in 1814, double buttonholes on uniforms in 1815, transferred to the Guards Corps in 1831, ribbons on banners celebrating 100 years of service in 1838 for St. George, banners for the war in 1878 with the titles Lifeguards and St. Andrews, and stars on hats in 1894. With David's assistance, Laura managed to contact the descendants of several soldiers seen in the photo. Each family preserved their own memories and stories passed down about that day when the entire regiment had assembled together. One family even shared old letters from their great-grandfather describing how the photographer spent endless hours arranging the soldiers, demanding perfect stillness for that flawless shot. Another family brought a pocket watch given to their ancestor that day, clearly visible in his hand when the image was enlarged. The most heartfelt story was recounted by an older woman named Eleanor, who recognized her grandfather in the front row. He always said that day was the proudest of his life, she told Laura, with tears in her eyes, not just because of the photo, but because it marked the day he was honored for his bravery. When they zoomed in on his uniform, they even saw a newly pinned medal that had yet to appear in official records, adding further proof of the photo's unique historical significance. As news of all these findings spread, the main museum experienced an extraordinary influx of visitors. People from across the region, and even farther away, came to see this remarkable image and learn about the soldiers who had stood side by side over a century ago. Several months into their research, the team decided to examine the edges of the photograph more thoroughly. These border areas had been long overlooked as unimportant. However, in one corner, partly hidden by the flap of a tent, they discovered something that altered everything they had assumed about early 20th century technology. Upon zooming in, they detected what seemed to be a second camera, one that was far too advanced for its era. It featured a huge lens, about 1 meter wide, mounted on an intricate frame, allowing for precise adjustments. "This could be the missing link," whispered Dr. Sarah Thompson as she stared at the enlarged image. A lens of that magnitude, if expertly built, could indeed capture the detailed resolution they were witnessing. Dr. Ivan Lebedev slowly nodded. But this technology was not meant to exist in 1903. This camera is decades ahead of its time. The revelation ignited the interest of photography historians and experts alike. How could anyone in 1903 have produced such an advanced camera, and why has it never been mentioned in history? Continued research uncovered references to a Russian optical engineer named Nikolai Romanov, who, in the early years of the 20th century, designed state-of-the-art lenses for the military. His innovations were hailed as revolutionary, yet much of his work was lost amid the turmoil of the Russian Revolution. It appears that the Zephyr Lifeguards photograph was more than just a remembrance. It was a demonstration of breakthrough military technology, explained Dr. Pavel Orlov at a press conference announcing their discoveries. It involved a camera with a lens nearly 1 meter in diameter that could capture details invaluable for reconnaissance. The theory found additional support when it was revealed that the photograph had been taken just a few months before the Russo-Japanese War broke out. The Russian military would have needed enhanced reconnaissance capabilities, and using a regiment photo shoot as a cover was an ingenious way to test the equipment. "What is truly astonishing," added Dr. Sarah Thompson, "is that this technology was so ahead of its time that it did not become common in photography for many decades afterwards. The Russian Revolution and the wars that followed must have decimated the research center, scattering its innovations far and wide. For Laura, however, the human element of the tale was just as significant. Because the image was so clear, she managed to identify over 200 soldiers and reconnect their descendants with portraits of their ancestors for the very first time. "This picture serves as a bridge connecting different eras," she told a reporter covering the story. "It is not merely an antique, it's a way for people to relate to their own family histories." The most touching moment arrived when David brought his entire family to the museum to gaze at his grandfather's face, sharply preserved with cheeks puffed from cigarette smoke. 4 generations stood together before the portrait, marveling at the link across time. "He would never have imagined this," David said, his voice heavy with emotion, "that after more than 100 years, his great-great-grandchildren would still see his face exactly as it appeared on that day." The researchers also uncovered another similar picture in the collections of the Ravna Museum. This second image displayed the guards of the 3rd Regiment from St. Petersburg during the reign of King Frederick William, taken at the same site as the famed Zephyr Lifeguards photo. This finding suggested that the advanced camera had been used on several occasions, lending further support to the notion that it was part of a systematic military technology program. The second photograph, measuring 44 by 98 centimeters, exhibited the same impressive detail. After scanning it at a resolution of 800 dots per inch, even tiny cigarette remnants were discernible in the grass at the front, just as in the Zanon Guard's image. Rumors began to circulate that the camera itself might still exist in a military archive in Russia. The team even came across an old, blurry image that could depict the mysterious camera, but they were unable to confirm its authenticity. When the researchers published their results in leading academic journals, the Zephyr Lifeguards portrait achieved worldwide fame. People started referring to it as the impossible picture, a long-forgotten relic restored when experts zoomed in and uncovered details no one had expected. The main museum was transformed forever by this discovery. What had once been a modest local venue became a destination for international visitors. The museum soon expanded, creating an entire exhibition hall devoted solely to the portrait and the life stories of the soldiers featured within it. The picture continued to reveal fresh information, allowing historians to piece together the later lives of many of the officers shown. Numerous veterans had led illustrious military careers, leaving significant marks on history. The regiment itself boasted a remarkable legacy, having taken part in 20 wars and traveled throughout Europe and across many seas. What do you make of this phenomenal photographic breakthrough? Have you ever noticed unexpected details while examining old family photos? Please share your thoughts in the comments below.